Norway, Norwegian skates with tempered steel and very long, racing skate. And the special shoes made out of kangaroo.
So did you learn how to skate from the time you were very small?
Oh yes, and you participate in the competition continuously. So in fact, one year I won the third place in the regional race, and they give a silver medal. Hang it up in front of you, and you wear it all the time. You wear it in the classes, you wear it at home, so everybody knows what this is. Also, the togetherness of students was very pleasant because of the church association. In other words, the whole class has to go to church at the same time. And march, it's almost a military fashion. You line up in church, and we also had a music lessons in school. And if you have a voice, they quickly find out that you have possibilities. Then you go to that class. In fact, I was in the choir for about 2 years with a very small voice. I guess I wasn't very good, but you learn. They teach you. And Russian prayers, some of them are very long, and special music for it. So the association with the church and the closeness of your students, you get to be real friendly because you are together so much of a time. You only separate for a month during a year, and the rest of the time you're always together. So you have a large friendship circle that they continuously visit you during the year. You're sometimes neighbors, sometimes students that live far away, and sometimes the parents get acquainted that way too, you see. And so you have more and more people that you know, and more times you have a chance to visit other people.
Sounds like they take the education very serious.
Oh yes.
There.
Oh, yes.
Alex, it seems to me that the education in Germany and other parts
Same thing.
of Europe are the same.
Yeah, same thing.
Now, when you say classical education, is that
It's
the
specific.
same as in other countries too? It wasn't like yours, this was unique to Russia particularly.
Well, in Europe, I don't think they go in too many languages like we do. See, they all have a Latin and Greek very extensively, because you go as far as Homer with the poems that you have to learn by heart.
Well, Alex, you still remember some of those,
I
don't you?
remember.
Go ahead and tell one if you can
the
remember it.
Song of a Musa, called Andra moi ennepe musa palutrapun, osmala pola pranchte pei, drossi erontole etrone person. And it was a very large poem. It was Troy and the period of attacks and all this kind of thing.
Sure.
The same thing.
So you had a
Latin.
lot of memorization
Sure.
that you had to do.
Latin.
Didn't you say one time that you memorized it so well that you just
In
started?
Latin, yes.
Tell
We have
us, right.
well, Julius Caesar, I knew certain passages, and during the examination, in fact, the examinations are held a little differently there. They have a written examination, and then they have an oral examination. The oral examination, each subject is divided into numbers. The numbers of, well, it's really measured by the textbook. Like the scissors probably will have 64 numbers. You see, and each number has a certain pages of the book and the time of a period. You see. So these tickets are put on a table, and the examiners often are not your teachers, but from outside, and they're dressed up in the uniforms with the green lapels and the gold braids and that kind of thing, and they sit behind the table with a green cloth. It's more like a courtroom, and the class sits in the regular school fashion like, and they call your name, see.
So you have to go up in front of the class also? Or
Well,
are
the
you
class is
faced up?
behind you,
Yeah.
you're facing them. And they have your name or whatever it is, your record in front of them, and they tell you to take a ticket, you see. And you just pick up a ticket and give it to them. So you don't know what ticket is. Then
So you
they'll
have to
tell
study
you.
all the subjects.
Right. Then they tell you that your ticket is so-and-so, so-and-so. It's a part of a Vidius or a scissor or whatever it is. And said, can you remember this passage? You say. And he didn't finish the sentence. I knew what he was saying, so I started to recite by heart very quickly. He said, wait a minute, that's enough, take another ticket. So another ticket, they vary. Some of them you recite, some of them they ask questions. This and this. So anyway, I passed the exam, but it was a very trying period for the students. I don't know what's a good idea or not, but sometimes you overcome by fear.
Sure.
You're scared to death. You see, particularly you're facing unfamiliar people, once you have your own teacher there, so you feel 100% better, by the way.
Right. Now, your professors or teachers, they wore uniforms too, right?
Oh, yes.
All the time.
All the time.
One thing that I don't think we've talked about is how everybody in Russia wore uniforms that when they were associated with the government in any way.
Oh,
is that
yes,
right?
all the officials and the government, they have their own insignia that you can, I don't think there's any obligation to wear the uniforms. They wear the uniforms when they are on duty, you see. But if they are outside, they could wear it. Some of them do and some of them don't. You don't have to wear it.
But your father didn't wear
No.
a uniform. But when you go out with your father, you'd see all the people with the uniforms on, right? Including in school.
Right.
Let me see, there's some other things I wanted to ask you about. I think we covered school, if you can think of anything else, and just go ahead and say some things, but you were also
Yeah,
saying
but
that...
one interesting thing is that that you really take pride in is that every year they give you a diploma for every year, so that your room is just the whole wall is covered as you grow up with it's a very uniform size diploma with the picture of the Tsar and the flag and the name of the school, and your name, all this kind of thing, and it, always framed beautifully, and you keep it in your room.
Sounds like it's
Every
quite
year
an
you add up
accomplishment.
another one, that's right.
To go
You're
through
really proud.
another year behind you.
Right.
Alex, but of course, then you did other things besides school. You were saying something about going to the opera and the theater.
Yeah, well, this is also connected with the school.
Oh.
That the school required that you attend the opera, you see. And they have a special arrangement. In fact, the opera house in kid was a beautiful, beautiful. When I saw in New York the opera, the Metropolitan Opera House, I was so disappointed to see, to compare with the opera house that we have. It's just one building put on the square, there's nothing around it, no homes or anything, just opera house.
So it's almost like the cathedral.
Oh, yes. And they have a beautifully decorated opera house with the red velvet and lodges. And there's two areas of lodges around, and then the gallery on the top, and the orchestra. And the left side and the right side of the orchestra was raised up a little bit under the first balcony, balconies over you. And they were chairs, not regular chairs with not the soft sit chair, but the regular chairs. And they were put like a two in front, two in the back, all along the theater. These are all the students' seats, you see. And the price was a special price, very, very reasonable. You get tickets from the school, not just subsidized by somebody.
But this would be like in the evening
Right.
that you go.
And they have a matinees. They have a matinees too. On Saturday matinee, they let us out of school to go to the opera. And we also had a dramatic theater. And when you are, in the fifth and sixth, seventh class, then you're obligated to see the plays, particularly classical plays that are discussed in the school. Chekhov's plays and so on. That was very interesting.
What about any parties? Did you have to go to parties when you got to be a little older?
Well, they had parties for schools. Mine was the number 2 school, and number 1, we were very closely related, and we weren't far from each other too, very close by. So the 2 schools were always, one school invites the other school for some affairs on Sundays. And these affairs usually, like a tea dance, you see.
Now, the other school was a boys' school, though.
Right.
Where did the girls come from?
The girls are invited. There's the two girls' schools, and each school is close to this school. You see what I mean? It's just like a Harvard University has a equivalent school for women, and I forgot the name of it now. I think Regina House. And,
so like you would go to the theater, to the opera, and to these parties with your sister. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you just say a few things about your sister? You already said that she was a year and a half older than
Right,
you.
she was a year and a half older, and she was very reliable as far as make sure that I was preoccupied too, in other words, she never leaves me. If she could take me with her, I'll go with her, instead of you stay home and I'll go, that kind of attitude. She was very nice, and she was very helpful. She helped me in the studies, and sometimes I have to, pre-exams particularly, she spends time with me. Their curriculum was all about the same as ours, so she was very familiar with what was required.
Right, so you
Right.
were close to your sister.
Right.
Is there anything else about school particularly?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, there's one thing that we forgot to talk about when we were talking about your store, and this was the retail store.
Right,
This was the winter fair, food fair
right.
that you were telling me about.
Every year.
last time.
Every year they have it's like a carnival time, but at the same time it was a sort of Mardi Gras, but also a commercial presentation. They have a special area for that, similar to a fair, like here in Dallas. They don't have any rides or anything.
Like
It's in the
fairground.
winter, yeah, like fairgrounds. But it's in the winter time, just before the fest time,
Before Lent?
before Lent, just before Lent.
It's at the same time of the year, Mardi Gras.
Right,
which
just
is in
like a Mardi
February.
Gras, that's right. And the whole area was, some buildings were built just for that purpose, was used for other things during the year, but during, they call it contracting time. The whole building was divided into, just like a convention centers here, different companies' representatives display their merchandise. Only there they display and sell. So they have a salesman, a lot of Chinese things.
So, Alex, these were, the fair had international.
International,
goods.
yes, oh yes. I remember you mentioned to me one time that you bought some lacquerware
Lacquerware.
from Korea. But I immediately thought of this contractor because they had places where just hundreds and hundreds of things made out of this.
So it wasn't just a food fair? Food
No,
was
these
part
are
of
all
it.
the silks from China, from Sweden, from Norway, from France, and practically from different parts of the world, you know. But you can get anything that you want. Some of them are demonstrations how it's made, and some of the things that you have in household, like corkscrews, bottle openers, and knives, and all this kind of a thing. And then on the streets below was a series of buildings for food section, and our firm was represented. It was for one part was for advertising purpose, and the second one was a pretty good business venture because of the amount of people that visit. Thousands and thousands of people from all surrounding areas come.
Did this last for a week or?
No, it's more than that. I think it will last about 2 weeks. 2 weeks time. And they come in to spend money, you know. They go back with whatever they want, you see. So the sales were tremendous. And in front of this, the stores, this particular store, were a display of unusual things. One was a whole display of a whole sturgeons, for instance, and display of salmons, and display of this whole dish of cheese, Swiss cheese. Very few people see that. They don't think that cheese comes a 140-pound block, you know, that you roll on the ground and all this stuff. But
You
they
just
don't.
buy it with a
That's
pound
right.
of it,
They buy
you don't know
a
where
piece of
it came from.
They don't see it. And my father was in charge of there, and we go over there, and in fact my mother was helping, I remember, helping the cashier for that period. Instead of one cash register, they had 2 cash registers. And one guy, my mother operated the second cash register, something like that.
It must have been a lot of fun to go
Oh, yes.
see everything. It
Yeah.
was been a very festive
It was
time.
fun.
Okay. Tell me about your summer home.
Yes. The summer home, with a lot of pleasant memories for me, was about 20 miles away from the city, and in the area which was beautifully developed many years probably, and it was connected with the trolley car that you can take direct express from the central part of Kiev, and you get off right near your house. And,
Alex, was this area developed just for summer homes?
Just summer
Or did people
homes.
live out there all year
yeah,
long?
oh yes, there's people who lived all around, surrounded by little areas of smaller homes, and little stores and so forth, and even a park and the area which was guarded, I guess, in woods all around. Certain places where you go for strawberries, for instance. That was a big pastime, and the families with the baskets, they go to a certain area and spend 2-3 hours walking and filling up the baskets with strawberries. They're a little bit of strawberries, like, wild strawberries. And the other places were the football field was for everybody's use, But the homes themselves were very beautifully designed, very ornate, and very large in the form of summer estates, like, with a huge garden area, fenced in, and a nice attractive gate. And the house itself was also ornate roof design, and particularly the facing outside, it's called the veranda, very almost the full length of the house, with the steps to go down, and you step into the garden area. The veranda, I remember, was on one side of the veranda, facing outside, was a number of portable tables, like a picnic tables, with the benches built on the one side and the movable benches on the other side. So the people sit on the benches on each side of a table, and the table can sit 20-30 people. The rooms were decorated, not sparsely decorated, but very summer furniture, and the floors were parquet floors, and scattered rugs, like, we walk from one room to another. And outside of the house was, when you get off on the left side, you have a gymnasium built with the whole area built for that purpose. Parallel bars and uneven bars and rings and horse trampoline and whatever it is. Everything was in that area. And then they had a swing. I remember swing with 4 people. 2 people sit on each side, and they sort of hold on and swing around. And next to this was an area for a picnic. And then the fruit trees. The fruit trees were carefully arranged with a certain type of fruit, mostly apples and pears. But the apples were a very unusual type of apples. They called the snowdrops, I remember. And right under the tree, they had a net, like an inverted umbrella around the tree, So when they're falling off the tree, they don't hit the ground, you see. So at a certain time of the year
When they're ready to
when
drop.
they're ready to drop, you just pick them up, and store them.
Well, what was different about these apples?
But they were snow white. And,
They weren't red or green on the outside?
white, no, white,
The
well,
peel was
green,
white.
yeah,
Oh,
green.
Oh, but white on the inside.
Oh, yeah, white on the inside, similar to Golden Delicious, only they're in different shape. They were round, not
Not
oblong shape. And then the pear trees and plum trees and so on. On full length of the garden area, where on one side was bushes and bushes of berries that you pick when they're ready, gooseberries, blackberries, raspberries, and then another berry, I can't think of the name of it, it's a little red berry, transparent berry comes on the stem, and you take, and they fall off the stem, you almost have a handful of berries. They're very, very delicious.
Alex, do you see those kind of berries in the store here, or are
No.
those just unique to
No.
probably that area?
I think they have jams or jellies made of it. Similar like, they have like a guava jelly,
Yeah.
but this similar to that jelly, not a guava jelly. And I have seen it in this country, yes.
You have seen those berries?
Yes. And the other hand was a vegetable garden, corn, cucumbers, squash, and whatnot, which was also taken care of by people, And in between were walks with white sand-like paths and spread out the benches where you can sit down in the shade under the trees and all this kind of thing. Very beautiful.
Alex, at your summer home, how long were you there? You only had a month that
Yes.
you weren't in school.
Right, well-
How long did you actually
The
move to the house?
the family moves when it's warm after Easter, and it's June, July, August. And of course, I only can get there on Sundays. See, take a trolley car. That's about 25 minutes, I guess. And I spend every Sunday until July, the whole month of July there. And that's when we had all the parties, the what they call it, family reunion things. And the house was constantly filled with people coming and going. Some would stay 3 days, some would stay a week, some would stay 2 weeks, and so on. Most of the family was on my mother's side visiting because of convenience, for one thing, and we had some friends. I had some friends from a nearby people, and we played soccer regularly. One particular friend of mine, we worked together a lot. We were talking about go fishing. So I told my father, and he told his father, we're going to go fishing. So
How old were you?
I think I was about 11, 12 years old. And so the father brought me all the fishing outfit with the baskets and fishing poles and hooks and this and everything. And we found out of a place where people usually go fishing, so we made some trial runs up there to see what it is. People were, it's a pleasant, very pleasant area, little brooks, creeks, and the ponds all connected like, and with a green grass in between, so you have a nice pleasant environment, pleasant place to sit down, and people around have a picnics and do the fishing at the same time. So we decided one day that we go fishing, and we started very early, before dawn, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We got there, and we sat down and starting to fish. Nothing happened. The first fish I caught was about 2 inches big, 2 inches long. Had to throw that back. He couldn't throw it back anything here. We sat there and nothing happened. We see the fish, we see carps going by about this big, but we couldn't get them. So finally we got tired. It was about breakfast time, and we decided, so, well, we better go home. We went back home with empty baskets. And he said, my friend said to me, he said, we have to get some, let's go to the market and get some fish, bring some fish. So we went by the market and pick up the fish, 2 or 3 fishes. And I come home, we go, Mommy, man, look what I got. So she looked at the basket, she immediately knew that we didn't catch it.
They were probably not fish.
Yeah, but that was
came from that area.
They didn't tease me occasionally, but my father knew it, my sister certainly knew it. I came to say, yeah, I said, where did you get the fish?
Any other things about the summer home that you remember?
No, with the exception that that was a very pleasant, relaxing place for everybody that's there. It's always a good, continual atmosphere. A lot of fun. Play all kinds of games, the croquet games and all this. It was very pleasant.
Okay, well then going back to an area that wasn't quite as pleasant, but that was sure interesting, why don't we pick up where we left off in Constantinople? Okay, just bringing us back to that scene. You had been wounded in the Crimea,
Right.
and had been taken to Turkey when the Reds pushed the White Army all the way to the Black Sea.
Right.
And you'd escaped the little island that you were on the hospital, and you and your friend found your way into the heart of Constantinople. Now, where did you start from there?
Right. When we get to Constantinople, we were so glad to see so many Russians there. You know, it was very easy. We felt at ease right away. We were home. Very easily to find out information. The first thing, of course, was the consulate. Where is the consulate? And our first stop was there. You appear in front of an official, and they have kind of a report card on you. Your name, your address, what army, what division, and sort of general.
You mean they already had that before you arrived, or you took that to them?
No, they have it. They have this like a information list. You have to register, in other words, with the consul. And they have your history right there, written down. So how long you were there and those kind of thing. And where you went to school, and I had a diploma, not a diploma, but the certificate.
From your school?
From the school. And he took the certificate and he said, let me see if we can transfer it in the French in French
Right.
language.
Now, Alex, one thing that I find interesting is that you carried that certificate with you through all of your adventures in the Army, and then you also had some pictures of your family.
No, I didn't.
Did you? Oh, I thought I saw a picture of your mother and your sister. Where did that
Yeah.
come from?
I don't know. I wasn't carrying it. Whether we got through the mail somewhere, I don't remember carrying pictures with me.
So the only document that you carried with you was from your school?
From a school certificate, that's all.
Mhm.
And anyway, they gave us, I think it's about 100 liras, like advance against your salary. We didn't get paid, I didn't pay a cent since I've been in the Army. Nothing,
You
know.
didn't get a monthly paycheck
Nothing,
like
yeah,
you do now.
that's right. So they give $100, and they said we went to the next room, and they give us the information officer there, and they tell us where you can get a room if you want to rent a room. I give an address where you can get a room, very reasonable, $5 a month or something like that. And so we were on our own with some little money, and we got a room to stay.
Nick, Alex, do you remember your friend's name? Now, you were still with your friend that was
Grigori.
pumping water.
Yeah, Grigori, called him Grisha,
Uh-huh.
like George. This guy.
What was his history? Was he in the White Army also?
Yeah,
Where-
yes.
was
He
he
was in
from
the White
Kiev?
Army. He was from Kiev, but not the same school, from a different school.
But he was your same age?
Oh, yes, same age. And, no, in fact, he was my school. He was my school.
And at this time, you were what age?
I was 20 years old, almost 20 years old. See, I was 19 and a half years old.
Okay.
Exactly, right. And so we started to walk around and just meeting people, and asking questions, where is this, that, and the other thing. Walking the main street is the Rue de Paris, it's a beautiful street in Constantinople. And then I saw a sign called the Grand Circle Muscovite. I said, what was this? He said, a restaurant. I said, it must be Russian. And they had a doorman, a Cossack, at the door. So I started talking.
Alex, you mentioned Cossacks once in a while. Will you explain who a Cossack is? Is it
The
a
Cossack,
particular area of
it's a
Russia?
certain area in the southern part of Russia, with the mountains and hills of population of, well, I don't know, it's a huge area. And these people were granted land by the Tsar centuries ago. And a period of time, this land was developed by them. And because of they didn't pay any taxes. And each family were obligated to send their sons to serve in the army. And they were as a special unit in the army, Cossacks unit. And they furnished their own horses, their own uniforms.
Do they have uniforms that distinguish them as
Oh,
a
yeah, entirely
Cossack? That you
different.
could you spot a Cossack?
Oh, yes, immediately. See, the uniforms were, the pockets on each side of a collar, like a jacket, was filled with imitation bullets, like, you see, on each side of a chest. You see the silver bullets, like, see, and the silver buttons, shirt like this, and they have a very narrow belt. So this area is known for silver mines. So they have everything in silver. The
Must have been beautiful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the belts, their saddles were always decorated with silver. Then the huge hats, fur hats, like, and then instead of a regular overcoat, they had the cover made out of wool, like a shawl, made in the form of a shawl, without arm space. You know what I mean?
Almost like a cape?
Like a cape, exactly, like a cape, you see. And this capes some very, very beautifully done, so when they walk around, they have special boots too. Boots were with a soft bottom.
Did they look pretty mean? Or were they just
Well,
really
kind of scary, yes.
scary looking?
Because they always have all a silver saber on the side of a belt, very short, but this size.
So the Cossacks were known for their military
Military accomplishments
accomplishments.
through the history of all the wars that Russia had. The Cossacks played a tremendous part, you see.
I see. Now, on the other hand, you were a Ukrainian.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
So a Cossack means the area that they lived in.
Right.
Okay. Well, so how did you know that the doorman was a Cossack? Was he dressed like?
Yes, well, you got the shirt and the Cossack's belt, you can tell right away.
So they even wore their Cossack uniforms
Oh, yes.
when they weren't ready to fight, or
That's right.
something they were very proud of, probably.
Right. Well, anyway, so I asked him who it was, and I said, who is the owner? And he named the owner. His name is Gavrilo. And I recognized the name immediately, Gavrilo.
That's his last name.
Yeah, I said, do you know he's from Kiev? He said, yeah, I think he is, you know. So I said, is there any chance for me to see him? And he said, well, I don't know whether he's here or not, but let me check, you know. So I waited until he came back, and he said, yes, he's here. So I said, right, I'd like to see him. So I come in, and I saw him. He's a big man with a beard, and he looked at me, he immediately recognized me. My name was Shura, when I was a little boy. And I remember that he used to carry me on his shoulders when I was a little boy, you know. And he was a very close friend of my father, a hunting partner. They used to go hunting together always. And he also was a shoe manufacturer. But, well, not only shoe, it's a leather, he made suitcases and boots and handbags and this kind of a thing. And, it's a very, very pleasant guy and very entertaining. He visited our house lots of times. So he was very glad to see me and asked me how I was and how I got here and this kind of a thing. And I still walk with a cane a little bit, you know, just to help walking. If I'm walking a long distance, I had a cane. And so I told him I was wounded and this kind of thing. So what are you going to do now? I said, well, I don't know what to do. He said, do you want to work with me? Yeah. I said, yes, I'd be very glad to. Well, let me think what I can come up with, you know. So sit down, we'll sit down and have a cup of tea and talk. And of course he asked me about my father. And he's the one that told me that he heard that the ones that didn't move with the brothers, were executed. He was the first one that knew. They escaped long before we did.
Did he kind of think that the revolution was going to be bad, and that's why he escaped earlier?
No,
or-
he knew that they have to leave, and you'll be better off to leave early. And he got out with money. This is the big thing, you see. And some of these people, including my father, they had money in other banks. In Switzerland, they had my father had money in France, you see. And so is Gavrilov, and so is Smirnov, the manufacturers paper goods. He had all these people are multi-millionaires, you know. They had money, and this money was put away in certain places.
So the money's probably still in the bank, is that right?
All right.
You wouldn't...
Mine is probably, I don't know. And at one time, I thought that maybe I could do something when I was in church.
Find it.
You know, some friends of mine that knew the attorneys said legally, is there any chance, you know? I had no document to say that my father owned part of this Canard Frere, you know. No, there's no way, you know. So anyway, he offered me a job. Son was very unique in its concept. What they did, actually, it was a theater, a movie theater, with a balcony and the sitting on the stage. And apparently sometimes they use it as a regular theater. It was very well built and very spacious. And they convert this into a restaurant. They made some, on the left side, as you walk in, they raised the floor, made like a platforms, and the separate openings or niches, like where you can have a private seating for 20 people, 30 people, and so on. And on the other side of the restaurant was the same way. The platform and was raised about 8 inches off the floor, and again was sitting tables 6, 8, 10, and so forth. And then in the center area around the dance floor was just tables of 4, usually 4 and 6, and so on. The seating capacity was very large. The lodges set 6 to 8 people in the lodges on the balcony. And then the one area in the balcony was for private parties, for only special services. There were no tables, but just the pillows, carpets, and you sit on the floor, and the very narrow benches for the service, like. And that's where they have the gypsy choirs for entertainment, serving most of the champagne.
How many people do you think the entire restaurant would seat?
I'd say about 200 people, so yeah, about 200 people. Spaciously arranged, because the dance floor area was a large area, and of course the stage is a full-size stage. In fact, we had an orchestra of 80 people playing there. And the dance floor area was used also for dancing. We had especially ballet dancers giving a solo exhibition, like 2 people dancing together, famous dances of Bolshoi theater from Russia and so on. The talent was abundant, because people that concentrated in Constantinople came from all parts of Russia, all different ways. Some come to Siberia, from Vladivostok and finally got to Turkey. The others came through Slovenia, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Muslim come that way, Poland, and excuse me, and so the talent was plentiful, and the owners of the restaurant were very familiar with the feel of what people would accept in the city, in the country of Turkey, and they play up that particular part, so they chose the proper programs, and the programs were changed, and it's called cabaret nights, with special attractions which were advertised, usually the place was full. The Constantinople was also a port for all the tourists, so we had a continuous flow of tourists people from all over the world visiting, and some would come in groups, some would come in large groups with special arrangements, reservations made for 40, 30 people at the same time, and so on.
And what about military people? Did you say that there were a lot of military people
the Constantinople was well represented by all the countries. So they have a French and British embassy and Italian embassy and a British fleet and American fleet was in force in the Mediterranean waters and so on. So the place was just swarming with all kinds of dignitaries and officials of armed forces. But my job was, because I wasn't able to freely walk yet, so my patron, Gavrilo, decided that the best thing for me to do is to start in this particular area. So it's kind of a checker's job. So you check the food and you expedite food. Now the kitchen was on the second floor, and it was a kind of not a regular floor, but it's a high floor. It's equivalent probably to a third floor more than the second floor. The connection with the kitchen and the main floor was a dumbwaiters. Two dumbwaiters that were connected with the kitchen, and they operated by rope. You pull the rope up and down, you see. And on the top in the kitchen was expediter also. And my job was to receive the order from the waiter who gives me the order. I check the order, put it on the spindle on the side of the elevator, ring the bell, and push that up to the expediter upstairs, you see. And he in turn gives the order to the chef of the kitchen, and when the food is ready, he rings the bell to me and tells me coming 26 or whatever it is. Usually it's operated by table numbers when the food arrives. And I in turn receive this, and I had a warming well, it's a stove, but not really for cooking. Just with a couple of burners and a plate of steel on the top of it, so you can put food on the top of it to keep it hot, until the waiter comes along. And constantly trying to arrange so that the waiters know when to be there. See, if they are not here, my job was to get some other waiter and tell Grisha or whoever he is, send over in the kitchen to pick up the food, that kind of thing. See. And so the food operation was a very busy spot, because you have to operate two of these waiters, two dumb waiters, and you constantly, basically mentally, you have to remember who is next, and all this kind of how long it takes to get food, because the waiters come and ask you, said, well, said,
Where's my food?"
Where's my food, you know? And I in turn had to check with the expediter upstairs and all this, but nevertheless, they somehow, I don't remember ever having complained that was too small or anything like this. Everything was fine. So I worked this way, and then I helped to add up the checks, the cashier's checks after each meal to make up the summary of how many people were served for lunch and how much took in for food and how much for beverage and so on. And the people that work in the restaurant were really experts in this line. The Melody was a very famous hotel in Moscow, Metropole. He was the head waiter there, Melody, and he was a Melody there, and he brought 3 or 4 men and train them as his assistants, and they were sort of a captains, like captains that divide the room in 4 parts, and each captain has a 1/4 that they are stationed and they supervise the service of the waiters, the busboys, and so on. A lot of times they are the ones that take the order and help serving, and the captain's job was a very lucrative job because they usually get the biggest tip if they do a good job, you know, so pouring wine and all this kind of thing. So I was interested in the workings of a service part of a dining room, which was carrying a lot of responsibilities that are not done, for instance, in this country. The preparation, like the waiters have to prepare their station, starting with the chairs and tables. The chairs on the top of usually put at the end of a night, they're put on the top of a table for cleaning purposes at night, you see. So when they come in, the chairs are on the top of the tables. So they have to take this off and wipe the chairs and wipe the table. Then the responsibility of making condiments table on the station, including making the mustard. You make your own mustard out of a dry mustard and vinegar and a little bit of sugar, and you have to beat it up and all this kind of thing. And you wipe all the bottles of vinegar and Worcestershire sauce or whatever. That was the responsibility of the waiters. And the service itself is they followed more or less on the principle of French service, which is different from a Russian service. Russian service is a little more complicated, but they used for only special reservations, the Russian service. The difference between the Russian service and the French service is that the Russian service is on the platters. Everything is on the platter. For instance, if you have a party of 12 people, you order hors d'oeuvres first. That could be caviar, smoked salmon, sturgeon, lobster, or they call it langoust there, and marinated Bismarck herring and things like this. All of this is put on a table in the special platters. You see. Usually it's the silver platters, all different shapes. For a caviar, it's a square, like a tea tray, with a ball of ice and a caviar and wedges of lemon and crackers or a toast, like a Melba toast for the caviar. If it's a smoked salmon, the whole side of a salmon is on the platter, you see. Sometimes they pre-slice 10, 12 slices already and put back again so that you can be served from that platter, see. So when the people sit down at the table, the captain and the waiter, usually it takes more than 2 people, waiter, they take these platters off the table and pass around and go from one person to another. Would you like that smoked salmon? And they said, yes, it's served from to your plate, and it goes around the next table
Where
and so on.
if the French way of doing that would be everyone would order separately.
Separately.
And they would receive their hors d'oeuvre separately on a
Right, on the
separate
plate,
plate.
right.
Not actually
Right.
be served it and ask.
No, the setting of the table is a different too, because in the Russian service, they put 2 plates, one on the top of the other one. See, the first table for your hors d'oeuvres. Then he picks up that, when you finish with the hors d'oeuvres, they pick up that plate and the other plate stays on. Then they bring platters of a main course and your plate is already there. See, that kind of a thing.
Oh, I see, okay.
It's a little more complicated.
A little more personal service for each person.
Right. They have it here in this country. It's more like in the White House. They probably have it. They call the butler service. You see, very similar, but they bring the hot plates. They put hot plates on the table first. Then the butler comes with a platter and serves from a platter to your plate, and it goes around. See, it's a butler service.
Well, Alex, tell me a little bit about the kinds of people that were the waiters. Did you have waitresses or were they just waiters?
Yeah, we had, I think it was 12 hostesses. They were primarily serving beverage. And then the waiters waited on the tables, and each waiter had a busboy to help him to carry dishes and so on. See. The hostesses were a very funny thing, but they were more of entertainers. They were allowed to sit at the table, you see, with the guest, and they weren't eating at the table or anything like this, but they were allowed to join people at the tables, you see. And that was one source of getting business, I guess, you see, because most of them were very beautiful, very attractive girls, and all of them are society people, princesses and countesses and so on, the relation. You know.
Alex, were all the people, or most of the people in the restaurant, were they exiled people that ran the restaurant?
Oh yes,
that worked
oh
in the
yes,
restaurant?
oh yes, yeah.
So all these people were just trying to make a living,
Oh, right,
even though that wasn't
exactly.
necessarily what they had been raised to do.
Yeah, exactly. But except some professionals. The professionals were in the kitchen, for instance. And there were so many the top-notch chefs that escaped alive, you know, and they were looking for work. The only thing they knew is their profession as a prepare food, you see. So the result was that in the kitchen we had only very, very qualified people stationed on the garde-manger, in the cold meat department, the fry department, and the grill department, broiler, and so on. Some of the chefs were even just peeling potatoes in the kitchen because there's nothing else they can afford to have, you know, and they were willing to do this for very little money, so they can be
Stay alive.
and stay alive and be in their profession.
And the same thing was true, you're saying something about the entertainers. Tell me about the
Entertainers the same
class
way.
of entertainers that you had, including the orchestra.
The orchestra was so selected that we had like a concert masters in the violin section. Usually it's only one, and we had about four concert masters, and the piano player was accomplished concert players, and a lot of them participate in the programs as a soloist of the piano, like a piano concerto with the orchestra accompaniment, and the same thing in the violins. Violins are very, very attractive when you have like a four violinists leave the stage and walk in the center of a dance floor. That's where the performances were, with the spotlights and all this kind of thing. And the four of them make like a circle and play a solo concerto with accompaniment of this orchestra. It's quite a thing that you don't see anywhere. I never saw anything like it since.
Well, what about, did you have
same thing on the singers?
singers?
Yes. The
Dancers?
singers, dancers. I know one was Karavayev was a very,
Your time in the Army, taking you up through quite a bit of your explanation of your stay in Constantinople, and we finished the last tape with you telling us about the entertainers that were at this restaurant. Also, Alex, what was the name of this restaurant?
Grand Circle Muscovite.
Okay. Why don't you go on from there?
All right. The particular features of this restaurants were specialty evenings, like cabaret nights, which were advertised maybe a month ahead of the time, so that our regular customers knew what was coming and at what period. Now this cabaret nights would consist of featuring artists, singers, either from France and of course quite a few renowned Russian singers, including former opera stars and so on. And these evenings were with particularly special features in the food service also. The presentation was handled by experienced former producers of the stage performances in Moscow theater and so on, and even the dancers were some members of the Bolshoi Ballet Theater in Moscow, and so on. The special groups, some of them were on our regular payroll. One was a spectacular gypsy ensemble, I think you would call it. Consists of about 6 or 7 singers and the 2 guitar players. And they were featured daily, they were nightly. And in fact, they had a special room called the Sultan's Room on the balcony for the after-dinner parties. They only serve champagne there, nothing else, just champagne. And of course, gypsies were the attraction for that particular evening. The beautiful costumes, the songs are wonderful, wonderful to listen to. The whole operation of the restaurant was very unique in the sense that such an abundance of talent was available, and it wasn't very difficult. We had special producers that look and select who they're going to invite next, and so on. At the same time, I had to give me personally an opportunity to meet some of these famous people that I probably would have never met otherwise.
Alex, did you remain being, did you say you're an expeditor from the kitchen?
Right.
Did you start being a waiter, or?
But I participate in workings of a dining room under the direction of a Medit Hotel, who was a very well-known hotel in Moscow, and he was in charge of the whole operation. And I learned a lot from him and attended his meetings, lectures, and so on. And I participated in the service in the role of a captain, and on a kind of a part-time basis, because I didn't give up my responsibilities of a checkers, being a checker also. So I made some provisions. So I had another person with me before, and I had another person to work with me, and we incorporate my station with a coffee station. And this coffee station was the coffee that you make to order. Well, the Turkish coffee, that you have to have a regular Turkish little
so like an
urn, little individual ones. For one, only you can make 1 or 2 cups at one time, see. And the samovar, the tea, was continuously in operation, also coffee. Now we had a lot of English people there as customers, and one of the popular drinks was English grog, which is a tea with brandy on the top. It's a kind of ceremoniously served at the table. They have like a teaspoon, you put a very small lump of sugar, and you pour the brandy and you light it up, and it's kind of flaming, and then you drop it in the tea glass and stir it up and drink it, the English grog, which is very popular in England.
Were these English people, were they military people?
Military.
Were there business people over there too that would stop in?
Yes, some business people, and the tourists was a big attraction. During the seasons, the ships come in, at least once a week you have a ship, and they unload hundreds and hundreds of people with the guides, and of course they all knew about our restaurant, and they made arrangements beforehand for special receptions, and sometimes just for the show, for the evening, for a cabaret particularly. And they have a group, so like 40, 50 people at one time.
Now, you were saying that you got to know some people through the restaurant that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to know.
Well, that's in the area of famous artists, or famous guitarists in Russia that were known all over Russia, that compositors or composers of their songs that were popular all over Russia and all this kind of thing.
Right, but you also met people that helped you get to the United States
yes,
too.
Yeah.
Through the restaurant, right?
Yes, I met particularly it was American Embassy personnel. They were the more frequent visitors in our restaurants, and I was making a lot of arrangements for their parties, particularly for ladies' luncheons, visitors during the tourist time. Apparently, the embassy was visited by tourists, and they have groups of 15, 20 ladies for lunch, So I met the secretary of the embassy who was making these arrangements, and become very friendly with her. I anticipated their needs, and she was counting on me to do a job that she expects and so on. So when time came when our presence in Constantinople became suspiciously thin, it looked like Turkey started to make arrangements with the Soviet Russia on some kind of a truce and some kind of a arrangement. And as we understood that the Soviets, the first thing they demand to negotiate for anything is to have all White Russians, refugees, to be returned to Russia. When this happened, our council and responsible groups that represent Russian refugees start to contact United States and England and France and Italy, which were our allies, and ask for help, immediate help, because no one of us wanted to go back to Russia knowing that we're going to be killed. The situation was very, very tense, and at that time the response was fantastic from all the countries. France and England, and all of their consulates opened the doors and start to take applications to make out the visas to go wherever you can go, and all of us were trying to figure which way to go. And of course, my immediate desire was to go to France because I spoke French, and I thought that my father had some connections there in the past, and maybe I can find out something, and so on. So I got my visa to go to France very quickly. It was about a month of June, I think it was in June. And they gave me a date of departure sometime in July. So I was pretty well set. Yet I wasn't sure whether the France is the answer. So I talked to a friend of mine, a roommate of mine, who was a bookkeeper in a restaurant. And he knew quite a bit about the United States. You see the pictures of New York and all this kind of thing, and what the possibilities are, and the immigrants are welcome, and refugees.
Was this friend also a Russian?
Yes, well, yes. He's a very good friend of mine for years, because he eventually came to the United States and was my roommate in Boston. When I lived in Boston, we were very, very close together. And so he told me, he said, well, if any place, I wouldn't give up United States for any of them. All of them put together. I said, I'll go to the United States if you can, you see. So I thought, but several people told me the same thing. Well, so you can't get the United States. It's very difficult. So I thought that I'll talk to the secretary that I dealt with of American Embassy. And she was very nice to me, and she told me, she gave me all the questions that she needs, I answer, and said, let me find out, and I'll see what I can do. And very quickly, a day or two later, she called me and said, I think you have a very good chance to go to the United States. And you come to the embassy and talk to me, and I'll explain to you and so on. So I did, and she said there's a committee in New York organized by the Catholic Society, Lady Vanderbilt and Mrs. Vanderbilt, Lady Astor, and so on. And that society's committees under the name of Help Russian Students an exile. And I would qualify to be in this particular group. And from then on it was very simple because the American consulate issue visa, and they gave me a certificate from embassy signed from one of the senior officers of American fleet, Mediterranean fleet. I know his name was Mr. J. Murphy, I remember. And with this, I was to be contacted by consulate, American consulate. And they did, and they gave me the date, which was earlier than the date I had to go to France, you know. So I was very pleased, and in fact, just before we were ready to sail, the last thing they did is to give us money. I think it was about $50, American dollars, for personal expenses, you know. And the passageway was a first class transportation to New York and Mauritania, which is one of the flagships of the British.
So your friend that was the accountant at the restaurant, he didn't go with you?
No, he didn't go, but he continued to find a way, see. And after I got to New York, I contacted him by mail, tell him where I was and so forth and so on, explained him. And he told me that he is coming with a group and will be at the State Island approximately on such and such a date, and I met him.
So
And
it did work out where both of you came.
yes.
Tell me a little bit more about the ship that came to the United States. You said it was first class.
Oh, it was a beautiful ship, beautiful service, dining room. You can eat anything that you want, including caviar and lobsters, tenderloin steaks and whatnot.
So you were really treated like royalty.
Oh yes, beautiful.
What happened when you got to New York?
To New York. Well, we were met by the committee, the same committee that brought us in, and they greeted us wonderfully. I just couldn't believe that people that you never met before, they were so generous and so considerate. And they put us on the taxis, and we all arrived to a Republican Club on 57th Street in New York, right near the Fifth Avenue in New York, which is a partly hotel and a club, the Republic, very well known establishment. And when I did this, they room us. We got two people in each room, and they gave us permission to sign for vouchers if we need anything, like money, for instance. And we can sign the checks. They had like a coffee shop there in the restaurant. We can use this, and if you want to eat, you can sign and show the certificate or whatever it is to the cashier, and she knows what to do, that kind of a thing. And very quickly they told us about New York in smaller groups, you know, the 2 or 3 of us, and a lady will explain us about New York and about the Russians, where they are, and so on. And it was a one area, 116th Street. That was a part where Russian church was. So they thought that would be the best spot to find rooms for us. And they found the rooms for us, two to a room. And I happened to get a fellow whom I knew for a long time from Kiev. In fact, he was Armenian. He's a very clever guy and very attractive in his way. And so we roomed together for several years until my friend Tony came. Then I moved with Tony, and we worked together for many, many years.
What did you think of New York City? You said that had you seen any pictures of New York City? You said something about how the tall buildings
unbelievable.
just unbelievable. When you saw it for the first time, were you overwhelmed by it?
More than overwhelmed. Very strange thing, but we arrived on the 3rd of July. And we did not disembark until the following day. And I don't think it was 4th when we got off. We stayed on the ship 4th of July also. So at night, on 3rd of July, we saw some fireworks. And we just couldn't believe. Why would they have like a bonfires and fireworks? And, quickly found out that the following day is the 4th of July, which is a national holiday and all this kind of thing. Then the next day, then we saw the fireworks all over the place.
It was a pretty nice welcome for you, wasn't it?
Yes, because we could see on the other side of the New York was a Palisades Park, which was on a hill, with a big restaurant there and fairgrounds, this kind of thing. And that's what they had, a mass display of fireworks. Serious, runs for hundreds of yards and everything goes up in the air. It was very, very impressive.
So what did you do when you got to New York, though? Okay, they found your place to stay?
Yeah, we found a place to stay, and a few days we were free to feel our way and still trying to keep in touch with our committee, because the objective of the committee was to put us in schools originally. So file our applications and our diplomas or certificates that we had, and the committee is the one that contacting schools all over the country, as a matter of fact. And in the meantime, it didn't look like anything is going to happen very soon, they told us. But very shortly, I was notified that I was accepted to go to Cornell University. And when wasn't any definite period, because they probably will take only 1 or 2 a year or something like that, so it might be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years before I will be able to go there, So in the meantime, but the people that we met, and we met many Russians already there, they'll give you advice, what do you think you should do and all this kind of thing. And, one of the ladies that was in charge of our group, immediate group, she talked to me, and she said that you had experience in the restaurant. I said, yes. He said, well, why do you speak French and you don't speak English? I think I have an idea for you, something like this. He said, there's a club hotel opening called the Westchester Country Club in Rye, New York. It's about 30 miles from New York. And they have a French crew there. They have a French melody and all this. Let me arrange for you, and you go and see. Maybe they'll be able to use you, that kind of thing. And I did. Took a train to Rye, New York, and I went to see Mr. Marcel, French fellow, and he was very well informed of what was going on in the White Army, how we got here to New York and all this kind of thing. And he was very receptive. I said, well, I have to put you here somewhere. And I said, well, let me think. He said, well, so I have one spot. He said, we have a children's dining room that needs supervision. I think you can do it because a lot of children have French governnesses and they speak French, so at the same time you have a chance to learn English, you know. And of course I said, oh gosh, I'll be very, very happy, you know. So I went back to New York, got my few things, you know, and found a room, or he found a room for me right near the Rye, New York, little, not a city, little village like. And I started to work there.
Mm-hmm. What happened to your roommate, the Armenian?
Yeah, he stayed in the same place. I didn't give up my room because I knew this is a season thing, you know, I'll be back. And I probably figure I'll have some time that I can get back to New York. It's not too far. Mm-hmm. 20 minutes ride from New York City. And so I worked there, and I really enjoyed tremendously because the children were very, very cute, and they had the ladies in charge of the children, governesses, and quite a few of them did speak French. And I had time for myself, you know. I didn't have to stay there between the meal times and nothing in the evening, you know. So I had free evenings. Sometimes you can go to movies in Rye. And the thing that surprised me, that the Hotel Westchester Country Club was it's about 500 room hotel-like, you know, but it's considered to be a country club because they have a golf course and a polo field. So every Sunday they have a polo game.
So it was more like people would come there for a vacation.
Right.
It wasn't
I
really
don't
like
know
a country
whether
club where people live around the area and come to play golf.
no, they don't stay too long. They stay maybe a week, 2 weeks at a time, and then somebody else coming in. So we have a new children and dining room continuously, you see. But every time they check out, I pay attention, you know, I talk to governesses and try to be nice to children, and they were very pleased with me to compensate me for what I was doing, because apparently they told their parents or the people that they worked for how nice I was all this time and all this kind of a thing, you know. So the mothers will come in and the last meal that they have and talk to me and give me an envelope, you see. And then I open up envelopes, and there was sometimes $10 in the envelope, like a tip, you know, for the service. And apparently they ought to see how it started, you know, then it became an absolute routine. So I almost expect that they said they're checking out today, so I'm getting ready, you know. I'm just gonna come in and look, and sometimes there's so much as $20 in the envelope, you see. And so I was counting money every night, you know, how much I have left. And I have already plans in my head what I'm going to do when I get back to New York. At the end of September was the end of the season there. And so by September, I accumulate $600, including my pay and the tips. So, $600 to me, I was a millionaire, you know. So I went back to New York and saw Walter, my roommate, and told him how wonderful it was, that kind of a thing. Then I went to Fifth Avenue and stores, and I bought everything I want for myself. The first thing I bought was a derby. Then I had a cane, walking cane with a silver handle. Then I had a Chesterfield coat, very formal, with the velvet color and this kind of thing. About a tuxedo, the tuxedo formal shirts, necktie. And I knew I could use it, you see, because in the club, the Republican Club, we constantly had invitations for the people, you see, to attend debutante dances. And one of the big things was the called International Ball, held by the same committee. Mrs. Laster might know this kind of thing at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Was quite an affair. And that was, they collect money for their needs, for the committee, you know, that's what it was. I don't know how much you pay, but probably cost $1,000 or something to go for this particular affair. It was a beautiful thing. So I had been all dressed up.
So you had quite a
And-
social
Oh,
calendar.
yeah. Oh, yes, yes. And you meet people, and it was another hotel, like a Astor Hotel in New York. We had some parties up there. And you have no problem meeting people. You know, we just meet too many. Sometimes you sit with 14 people, you don't know who they are. Just doesn't see it as Russian students or something.
Yeah. So Walter went to all these parties too, your roommate, your Armenian roommate.
Yes,
So you
yeah.
knew a lot of people that went
Oh,
to
yes.
parties.
Oh,
And what
yes.
did some of these other students do in the meantime? Like you had gone up to work in Westchester and...
Some of them, some Russian restaurants up there in New York. Some of them work in Russian restaurants. In fact, the friend of mine, he worked in the Russian Bear restaurant as a waiter, you see. And he was making very good money there. The others, they were placed, some of them work in the factories. And when my friend Tony came, he got a job at the Nabisco company in New York.
And what did he do there?
He was at not receiving, the shipping department, you see. And he was telling me, he became a zombie. He got so exhausted he couldn't move. I said, what are you doing? He said, what am I doing? I'm unloading these boxes of cookies. Packets. And he said, they come by conveyor, you know. And you can't stop it to do it like this. He said, for 8 hours. He said, they only weigh about 20 pounds, 10 pounds each. But when you finish, he said, you move 6-7 tons of something.
So how long did he stay with that job? It seems like
He stayed there for a long time because when I settled down after the Westchester Country Club, I know I didn't want to not to do anything, you know, you want to do something. So I went to the hotel, Statler Hotel, opposite Pennsylvania station, radio station, which was the newest and the biggest hotel that time. They just was opened about a year before, I think. 1,800 room hotel with a tremendous operation. So I went somehow to I wasn't shy. I mean, I go to anywhere. I was the president. I just try to see him. I don't care whether he wants to see me or not. So I finally got myself to the personnel director of the hotel, and I told him I work at the Westchester Country Club with the Monsieur Marcel, and he said, "Oh yes, he's a friend of mine, you know." And I said, "I'm finished for the season. I'd like to do something here." And so he said, "Well," he said, "we do have an opening, but you have to have experience." I said, "What is it?" Soda fountain. So I didn't know what soda fountain was. But at that was no liquor, at that time, in 1920.
Oh, I see. So soda fountain sort of took the place of our bars.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what it was. Right in the corner of the hotel. The minute you open the doors, you walk into, it's a tea room, like a coffee shop, and a soda fountain. And soda fountain is tremendous in size. Like 20, 30 people can sit. And then on the other side, there's a room that seats about maybe 150, 200 people, you see. And the whole system there of operation is unbelievable. What they do, you see.
So what was the opening? What?
As a soda dispenser.
A soda dispenser?
Right.
What exactly does a soda dispenser do? Is that like a...
They making up the drinks.
Okay.
Ice cream sodas and they put me on the orange and lemon section.
How many soda dispensers did they have in that location?
12 or 14 men. You see, that's open from 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Were you like behind a counter?
Behind the counter, yes.
You weren't like in a kitchen or anything?
No.
Like you were
Behind
right
a white jacket, I'm in the same uniform and white apron. And you have this orange electric machine, orange squeezers, and lemon squeezers, all kinds of juices, garnishes. And then you prepare your slice lemons and berries and cherries and all this kind of a thing. And crates of oranges and lemons you use a day. This is then you have the soda ice and all this kind of a thing. But I learned very quickly. There was no delay on my section because there was a man in the middle of the counter was calling orders for the people in the tea room or whatever it is. Soda fountain room, I don't remember what it was. But the menu was quite extensive, you see. Like each one has responsibility of one section, you see. One man makes all the drinks that made out of orange juice or lemon juice. That was mine. The next to me was ice cream sodas of certain flavors. You see, in front of them, maybe 10, 12 jars that you pump, different kinds of syrups. Then in front, below, are 6 different kinds of ice cream. The next section was ice cream sundaes, all silver dishes, banana spring dishes, and you toppings, all kind of fudge supreme and fudge this and butterscotch this, all lots of stuff, bags of whipped cream on the top and all that kind of thing. Then the next section, the repeat of what we have on this half. You see another orange section over there, and all this kind of. And it was a very fast deal. You just keep going. Of course, you have to be very neat and clean. The counter has to be clean in front of you, polite and all this kind of thing.
Do you actually talk
I already
to the
began
customers?
already begin to. Not really fluently speak, but I like to say good morning, good afternoon, how are you, or something like this. And we had some fellows were Spanish fellows that worked behind the counter, and a couple of them spoke French, and that helped me because they tell me do this and do that,
There were probably a lot of foreigners in New York
Oh
at the
yes,
time.
oh yes. And so I stayed there for quite a while. That was 1923, 1924, 25.
Well, you didn't keep doing the
26.
same thing, did you?
No, I'll tell you, I moved out so good. I jumped this from one station to another until I covered up the whole operation, you see. And the head man, about 2 years later or something like this, the head man was from Puerto Rico. And he was making all the syrups, you see, for the soda fountain. Not only syrups, but club soda, ginger ale, and preparation of all the sauces that are used in a hotel, including the kitchen, because the kitchen is a basic department, you know, and they use fudge and butterscotch and all the fresh fruits, fresh pineapple, strawberries, raspberries, and all of them. Some of them have very complicated formulas how to make it, you know. So when he was ready to ask for permission to have a leave of absence, you know, to go to Puerto Rico, a man who was in charge of all food and beverage operation, his name was Mr. Hennessy, he called me in the office. I was scared. I didn't know what he was going to say, you know. And he said that Giuseppe, they call it, this guy, I think was his name. He's going to Puerto Rico. And we need you to learn all the recipes so that you can do the job while he's in Puerto Rico, you see. So I said, yes, sir. So that I spent about 3 weeks with the Giuseppe. And he showed me the special room in the basement with the preparation, with the confectionery stoves. Nobody had confectionery stoves. They're low stoves with several burners like this. And you take 1 and 2 circles out, and you put copper kettles. You see, with 2 handles are very, very heavy. They hold about 4 or 5 gallons. And you have bags of granulated sugar, powdered sugar, glucose, and all these extracts of different kinds, you know, in the cabinets and everything. And he had all of his recipes were written on separate pieces of paper, like, you know. So they have to find out that he tells you how, you know. So I said, well, I'm going to number, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
myself.
could you read what he was
Yes.
writing?
Oh yeah.
Could you read the recipe?
Yeah, I could read this pineapple, but you know, it's not sugar pineapple, cherry. That's I could figure out whatever it is, and I remember I was doing it with him, you know, every day. So I marked the recipes for myself, so I know put number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this kind of a thing. And before I knew, I had almost a recipe book for myself, you know, how to operate. Finally, here Giuseppe was satisfied that I could do it, you know. I learned how to operate this soda and ginger ale, which wasn't easy. It's kind of
How does that work? I don't understand how you make
you bottle syrup and soda and water, and you put gas, goes to the gas, CO2 gas, you know, and the bottle stands here and it clamps down close to the bottle.
Oh.
That kind of, it's not as fast as the machine that's in the factories, you know, but it's fast enough. You can make 200, 300 bottles a day with no problem. So that was my job for quite a while. Then I went back.
Did he come back from Puerto Rico
Yeah.
later?
Yeah, when he came back, then they told me that I'll be in charge of the soda fountain. You see? So I became a big shot. I didn't stand behind the counter anymore.
What did you do?
I was on the other side with the cashier working with me, you see. And the waitresses come to me and give the checks, and I was able to read by that time the chocolate soda and whatever it is. I call the orders.
Mhm.
And sometimes I had to train the new fellows behind the bar and all this kind of thing.
Well,
And
did anything ever come up about going to school? To Cornell?
from time to time, yeah, I've heard, yeah, but no calls yet, nothing. That was until 1927, see. In 1927, they opened a hotel in Boston, Statler. Mr. Hennessy, I was his protege, I think, more or less, because he is the one that pushed me. You do from place to place, up and up and up all the time, you know. And I felt that way, that he was really want to make something out of me, you know. So he called me in the office and he said, "You have to go to Boston." I said, "Boston?"
You're used to being a big shot in New York.
Boston, yeah. I said, "Well," we're opening up a restaurant and we have a Café Rouge there. And we also have a soda fountain right in the Café Rouge for the service, not for the people, but for service, for waitresses. And so that means that you have to have somebody that you have to train to make the syrups there. And somebody trained to be in the soda fountain behind the counter, you see. And you go be assistant manager of the ladies in charge. Her name was Miss, forgot her name, Filer, Mrs. Filer. Like an old school teacher with the glasses, you know. And I was to assist the whole operation, you know, that kind of thing. See. So I came home and I said, "Tony," oh yeah, I told Mr. Hennessy, I said, "I can't go." He said, "What do you mean you can't go?" I said, "I have a friend. We lived, we roomed together, you know, and he's a Russian friend and he's very close to me." He said, "He works for," I said, "What does he do?" I said, "He works for the Bisco factory."
He was still lifting crates?
Yeah.
He had
calluses on his head still.
But he had advanced.
Huh?
He had advanced
No,
to
stayed
better
the same,
position?
yeah. So he said, "Oh, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well," I said, "can I take him with me?" I said, "Oh, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'll teach him how to make the syrups and the fountain." He said, "Okay, do this and take her with you." So I came home and said, "Tony, we're going to Boston."
Yeah? Was he happy about going to Boston?
Yeah.
Anything so
Yeah,
had to quit
because I
listening?
talked to him every day or every night what happened
Sure.
in the place, you know, and he was very interested. He saw the soda fountain operation. He saw me when I was making syrup and all of that.
Right. So you went to Boston. Now,
That
wait-
brought Tony with me.
right. Now there's a story that I don't want you to forget to tell about somebody that was trying to learn how to drive a car.
Well,
That's in New York.
he's the one.
Was that New York?
Yes,
or
yeah,
Boston?
he's, I can't think of his name now, he's an Armenian fellow. Yeah, he was making good money as waiter up there, you know. And he wants to get a car and be able to drive. Said a lot of people drive cars here, you know. So I said, "All right," he said, "there's a lot of places where you can get it, find out how much." He said, "Well," I said, "before I buy a car, you have to learn, you know, you have to go to school and get a license, you see." I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, I'll find out." And sure enough, he found out. He went to a mechanic school
He accidentally went to mechanic school.
Mechanic school.
Well, the way.
To order everything about the car.
So how long was he going through school before?
About a year. About a year before then he finally found out that you have to learn how to drive the car before you can get a car.
But he had to learn how to be a mechanic.
Right, after we said he can take automobile apart. He showed me all these drawings, of the chassis and this kind of things.
What he really wanted wasn't it, he really wanted just to learn how to drive.
Right, that's right.
Instead he was confused
Right,
and got into
yeah.
a mechanics class.
But eventually he knew what he was doing. He knew what made the car go and all this kind of.
Was this Tony or was this someone else?
No, I can't think of his name, funny name too.
Were there any other interesting people in New York? Did you say that matchability was maybe?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
the church. The church was the central thing over there. Every Sunday you go, and after the services, you meet hundreds of people, and you go together to their house, or you go for have a tea or a sandwich or whatever, And one of the guys was Machiavelli. He was selling perfume out of a pocket, He was making perfume, say Prince Machiavelli perfume. And he wants your opinion, said, I'll give you this. Next week you let me know what you think of this, And eventually he starts little. Well, the factory was right in his room. That's how he started. But eventually he became known, and he still is Prince Machiavelli perfume.
Did you say that it was kind of a family secret or family trade
yes.
of his?
Yeah.
That he was just carrying on?
Right.
Right. Okay, so you got to Boston with Tony.
Right.
What happened there?
Well, everything was fine. I bought a car, a Hupmobile convertible. See, where we lived, Tony and I, on there's a Symphony Street, I think it's called it, right next to Symphony Hall in Boston. It was an apartment house, about 4 stories high, with the elevator, and on the opposite side of our building was a garage. And somehow, I don't know how I was on the other side of a street talking or something. Oh yes, I want to find out about the automobile, cars. Where can you buy a car? What expensive, how much they cost or anything. So I talked to the garage man. And he said, well, yes, you can buy it. The new cars, there's lots of different makes and all this kind of thing. He said, in fact, we have a car here that's for sale. Belonged to a doctor, and he's on the blocks. And said, if you want to see it, you come over with me and I'll show you what it is, So I said, I'd like to see it. And I saw the car, a huge car, automobile, almost new. There's no scratches or anything on it, So you said, you find out how much it is. And I said, well, I live right across the street, and I'll stop in, bring my friend to see what he thinks of this car. I told Tony, and he looked at the car, and he said, it must be pretty good if it's running, be sure it's running. So I think he asked, I think it was $250 for a car. I'm not sure, maybe $300, something like that, but it still was a lot of money for me. But after a long debate with Tony, I tried to go along so he go along with me and sort of split the cost. He didn't want to spend the money on the cars, and then he didn't know what he could learn how to drive and all this kind of thing. So finally, I met the doctor who owned this car, and I told him that I'd like to have it, but I have to learn how to drive. He said, "Oh, you go in the driving school and learn how to drive first," you see, and probably it'll take you a month or so. And if you still want it, I'll sell it to you. And that's how I bought this Hatmobile.